Thank you very much, Kevin, and my thanks to you and Darren and British Columbia Principals Vice Principals Association for this opportunity to reach out. Also, just want to thank everyone for joining. I know it's the latter part of what was surely a busy day, and we appreciate your time. I would also like to start with land acknowledgement with respect and gratitude. Me and the team here in the Ministry of Education offices are coming to you today from the traditional lands of the Algonquin-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. Again, as Kevin said, acknowledging that people are coming to this webinar from all around the province, and certainly encourage you to take a moment to reflect on the traditional territory that you're on, and include an acknowledgement if you wish in the chat. Also, in addition, I'd like to say that our thoughts, and I imagine yours, are with family, friends, and colleagues who have been affected by the adverse weather that we've been having in the province, and particularly in communities like Abbotsford, Merritt, and Princeton. So I'll take a moment to say a little bit more about the team. So my name is Rob Hicks. I'm the director of the Student Transitions team. And so our purview is essentially all programs and policies that help students make the jump from grade 12 to post-secondary study. Our centerpiece of our work is the Provincial Scholarships Program, but we're also active in other areas such as dual credit policy and programming, which allows students who are still in grade 11 and 12 to start some post-secondary training. It's my privilege to introduce the team. So Shona Baran leads the scholarships team and related policy development. Lesia Regner manages the program, administration, district and school level communications. And also want to say that here in the room with us today, we have Crystal Bayou, who's the program assistant, and she leads frontline services to students. So a little more detail on our agenda for today. We'll provide an overview of the program. We'll go into some details about each award, including how recipients are chosen, overall requirements, as well as requirements specific to each scholarship. We'll explain what students must do to turn a scholarship voucher into a check. And we'll share what we've been doing lately and what we're looking forward to doing in the near future. And most importantly, we will take some time at the end to take your questions. Yeah, if at any point you have questions, do put them in the chat. I believe Kevin will prompt us as appropriate, and we will also take those away. If there are questions unanswered, we can follow up. So a few things I'd like to note at this time. First of all, the timing of this presentation is intentional. Fall is the time to start thinking about scholarships, to have those conversations with your students, with parents, with staff. Get your students planning for graduation and the possibility of scholarships. Another note is that the information on these slides has been summarized. Details about the Provincial Scholarships Program are online. We will share links at the end of the webinar. And in terms of future use, we hope that these slides provide a jumping off point and are a helpful reference, but please always refer online to material online for kind of current and complete information. So a high-level overview of the program. Similar to the mandate of my team, the program supports students to transition from grade 12 to post-secondary study. The last major engagement on this program was in 2015, where the majority of voices reiterated that scholarship should be tied to post-secondary study. The program has, I'd like to say, an impressive reach. More than 13,500 scholarships are issued a year, and that equates to a value of over $17 million. And as you can see on the slide there, that means 1 in 4 graduates receives at least one scholarship. A few key facts on the program and how it works. This is a reimbursement style program. So checks are sent to students after they have started a post-secondary program and tuition has been paid. For most awards, students have 5 years to use the scholarship. And with that, I would like to invite Shona to walk us through each of the 4 awards in the program. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob, and good afternoon, everyone. Right, so let's dig in now to the different types of scholarships under the program. There are 4. The majority of those scholarships are within 2 types. One is the BC Achievement, which celebrates academics, and the other is the District Authority, and that celebrates students across 7 different areas of achievement and is probably our most flexible scholarship. Those are both worth $1,250 per award. Next, we have our BC Excellence and Pathway to Teacher Education. Those are both worth $5,000 per award. The Excellence celebrates students for leadership and for service in both school and community, and also students who have a focused path towards a chosen career. And then the Pathway to Teacher Education Scholarship is a celebration of future educators. A few things about how many students or how many awards a student can earn. A student can earn basically up to 3. So they cannot earn more than 1 type of the 4 scholarships that you see there. And they also cannot earn both an excellence and a pathway. So let me just describe that a bit more. A student, for example, couldn't earn 2 different types of district authority awards in 2 different categories, but they could earn, for example, a BC Achievement and a district authority. And while they can't earn both an excellence and a pathway, they can certainly apply to both awards. Let's take a look now at the core eligibility requirements. So these are the requirements that must be met for a student to be eligible for any of the 4 award types within our program. So you see them up on the screen here, things like being a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, but also being recorded as such within the student information system, unless you will get into some of those data issues later. Another example of the core eligibility requirements is to graduate. So the Evergreen does not meet that requirement. And I would just want to focus there on that last bulletin, where you see the program calendar from September 1st to August 31st. So that's what we think about as the time frame within which a student has to meet eligibility requirements. So for example, for the 2022 awards year, which we're currently in now, this year's grads have up until August 31st, 2022 to meet the requirements that you see here and that we'll be talking about over the next few slides. Basically, that gives every cohort of students the summertime to do any upgrading or finish requirements as needed. So if you graduate over the summer, you're considered part of like the previous graduation year cohort for the purposes of scholarship eligibility. All right, let's dive into the BC Achievement Award. So this is recognizing students purely for academic achievement. And when we think about academic achievement for this award, what we're talking about are the grades for the courses that are used to meet graduation requirements for the students. So it's a subset of courses that are looked at. With respect to eligibility, remember students have to meet those core eligibility requirements that we just dug into. And then each scholarship also has additional ones. So for example, with the achievement, a student must meet at least 73% in the course that is used to fulfill the Language Arts 12 graduation requirement. And for example, they may only have a maximum of 1, a course which has a transfer standing or standing granted grade, if you will. Now, if they have that TS transfer standing or SG standing granted, In other courses not used to meet the graduation requirements, that's a-okay. But within those grad requirement courses, it can only be one, and it doesn't matter how many credits that course is worth. Also, a requirement for the achievement is that the student must be on the Dogwood program. Students on the adult Dogwood are ineligible for this particular award. So how does it work? The BC Achievement is the one award under the program that does not require students to apply. So if a student is eligible, their marks will be automatically considered for the determination. So what do I mean by considered? An average of those courses for that student that are used to meet their graduation requirements is calculated. The BC Achievement average, if you will. And so that BC Achievement average, it's different from student to student in terms of which courses are pulled to meet that average. So it's different from a student's GPA, and that's one key takeaway I'd like you to remember. So once those averages per eligible student are calculated, the top 8,000 marks, that determines which students will receive this scholarship. So if there's a tie at the 8,000 mark, what breaks it? It's the percentage for the course used to meet the Language Arts 12 requirement. That's going to break that tie at the 8,000 mark. A couple things to think about. As I'm sure you know, it's a highly competitive scholarship. Students can do very, very well academically and not manage to secure one. So we often get students writing into the team ahead of scholarship time, asking if we think that they are in the running, so to speak, for a BC Achievement. What we let them know is maybe, but we can't predict. There's no set percentage that guarantees an award. It depends on how well other students are doing in the province in their cohort for that particular year. And again, comparing GPAs from student to student is not helpful in terms of predicting who's going to get one or understanding who got one afterwards. Students will find out if they got a BC Achievement when they receive their paper voucher in the mail in the late fall after graduation, and also through the student transcript service, which you'll hear about a little bit more soon. All right, let's dive into the District Authority Scholarship. So District Authority Scholarships are recognizing students for various interests. There are 7 areas that students can be awarded in, and I'll get into those shortly. One unique feature about the District Authority Scholarship is that students who are on the adult Dogwood are eligible for this particular award. In terms of other eligibility, it's really based on local decisions at the district level or independent schools through FISA. Of course, following ministry guidelines, and you'll see there's a link there on the slide. That link points to the webpage for administrators, and it has all sorts of information, including ministry guidelines and so on. And again, at the last 2 slides of this presentation, we share all the links for you for these kinds of details. In terms of how it works, so there are 5,500 awards available every year, and those are divided across districts and to independent schools through FISA, proportionally based on September 30th enrollments. One key takeaway that we want you to remember is when informing your students who schools have selected as conditional recipients, after you've gone through your local processes for determining them, please make sure that students know that it's a conditional award at that point. They still do need to make sure that by August 31st of their graduating year, so for this cohort, it's 2022, August 31st, that they meet those core requirements. And one thing that you can do, and we strongly encourage you to do, is to, on that administrator's webpage, use the conditional notice that's up there, which is a letter essentially to students describing to them what it means to be a conditional recipient. And here is an example of what that looks like. This is the notification from this past year, 2021, and describes what it means to be a conditional recipient. And again, we'll share those links later. Just to like to show you a little bit of data here. What you're looking at is a provincial distribution of the 2020 awards across BC and across the 7 areas of achievement. So I'm going to call those out to you. And yes, it's from left to right. Applied design skills and technology, community service, volunteer activity, fine arts, Indigenous languages and culture, languages, physical health and activity, and technical and trades training. So again, this is a snapshot of the whole entire province, and you'll see the 3 most used categories are community service, fine arts, and physical activity. And while this is from 2021 awards year, this is very typical, at least for the last few years in terms of distribution. I'd like to pause here for a moment. And we'd really love to hear from participants about local strategies for promoting and awarding across these 7 areas of achievement. So I'm just going to pause for a few minutes, invite you to share your thoughts, and ask you, Kevin, to share those with us.
Sure. So just for our participants, if you want to respond to that question in the chat box or in the question answer box, I do have a couple of questions already for you. If you don't mind, we have 3 questions. And the first one is, how do we find out which students from our school won the BC Achievement Award?
That is a great question, and thank you for that. So historically, those lists of the school level lists of students who won a BC Achievement Award were posted to the School Secure Web. We have not reported those for 2021 or 2020. The program is currently reviewing those reports for a few things. Privacy, relevancy. When I say that, it's because there were some data that was included there from the previous graduation program. And also just to relook at the templates, what kind of information are we reporting and how and visually and whatnot. So currently reviewing those, but what I do want to reassure everybody is that those awards were assigned. So students from the 2019-20 graduation and 2020-21, those paper vouchers were mailed out to recipients and also posted to Student Transcript Services. So those scholarships were awarded. I know there's definitely interest in those school level reports. I would invite folks to comment on how those are useful to them and what they're used for, and it will help us, in terms of next steps as we review them further.
Okay, thank you for that. So our next question, are students in the dual Dogwood program eligible for the BC Achievement Scholarship?
I have no reason to think not. Yes, yes, they must have graduated, and yes, there's no exclusion being on a dual Dogwood.
And the last question, actually, sorry, I think we have one more question. Is the average of all required courses from grade to 12, is that how the eligibility is determined, or are the recipients determined?
Sorry, this is for the BC Achievement Scholarship?
I'm assuming so.
The average of courses from grade 10s to 12, it's all the courses required for graduation that would be marked as used towards graduation requirements. And yes, an average is taken per student. Does that help answer? So yes, any courses within there from 10 to 12. Okay.
We have one last question. A number of our members have added their feedback to your question to the chat, and certainly I'll save that, and that can be part of our share out with participants. Dan asks, will student scores in the provincial assessments like Lit 12 have any impact on eligibility for any of the scholarships?
Thanks, that's a great question. So at this time, the outcome, as in the result of those graduation assessments, does not affect scholarship eligibility. However, a student has to have completed them, as in has to have graduated, completed those requirements.
Right. Okay, thank you. So from the chat, as just reviewing the chat, it looks like there are a number of districts who who provide scholarship evening webinars or celebrate the success of the recipients in their school districts or school communities. So sees lots of celebratory events connected to that. Maybe our final question before we move on is social insurance number still required for students who are selected for a district authority scholarship?
Yes. Oh, that's the question? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is required at the point of a student redeeming the scholarship so that we can issue payment to them.
Okay, great. And so I'm seeing that we have a few more questions, but if we can move on. Again, it feels to me like we may not get all of the questions answered during the bookends of this webinar. For our participants, Shona, Leslie, and Rob have agreed to answer your questions after the webinar, and then I will send those answers back out to all registrants. So thank you for that, Shona, and please continue.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for your feedback and for your questions. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's look at the details of the BC Excellence Scholarship. So this scholarship recognizes a broad cross-section of excellence, if you will. So looking for students who demonstrate leadership and demonstrate service both in school and in community, and also students who demonstrate that they're on a clear path to a chosen career. We receive about 260 applications every year. We'd love to see that number go up. Every secondary school, every high school can submit one nominee. So we'd love to see all of them doing that. And that 260 is average year to year, certainly for the past few years. In terms of specific eligibility for this award, things to keep in mind are grade requirements. Again, you'll see that 73% minimum for the language arts, 12 course used to meet the graduation requirement. And there are other minimum grade requirements, such as a B average in all grade 11 and 12 courses used to meet the grad requirement, as well as minimum requirements for courses in social studies, mathematics, and science. Again, details of all this are online, and we'll share links for you afterwards. So how does it work from a student's perspective? They do need to seek the nomination from their high school. And once they do that, they prepare an application. It includes multiple pieces, if you will, including a written statement, including a resume package, reference letters, and must be submitted in mandatory format and online. How are they reviewed? So we have teams of BC teachers that review the applications. So the first step is that all applications get a review. The written statements are reviewed by one team of BC teachers. From that, there is a shortlist created. And that review, by the way, is set against marking guidelines that are available online to students. Once that shortlist is determined, then another set of BC teachers, a committee, will review the next part of the package, which is the resume package, again, based on publicly available marking guidelines. And that committee, by consensus, determines the 55 conditional recipients of the BC Excellence Award. I say conditional because just like with district, they must carry on to meet core and scholarship specific eligibility requirements by that August 31 deadline. A note about this year's 2022 applications. So there has been a sample up online for several months now, which is great, giving students an opportunity to prepare. And the 2022 live application will be going online in the coming weeks. Definitely encourage all schools to have processes in place for putting forward a candidate this and other years. On average, if you're looking in the past several years, there's always around 7 districts that don't have representation in the pool of applicants. Okay, pathway to teacher education. So we get around 190 applications for this award every year. There are 20 to go out. The committees are looking for students who are on a clear path to a career in K-12 education, who are showing aptitude to become an educator. And they have the same grade requirements. So scholarship specific eligibility is the same for pathway as it is for excellence. Similarly, the process for applying directly to the ministry is the same for excellence, with one difference in that students who are interested in the pathway to teacher education scholarship, they do not need to seek a nomination from their school. There's no restriction there. And similarly, the 2022 applications will be online very soon. And there's already a sample up that students can use to start preparing and has been for many months. All right, I'm looking forward to introducing Lasia, who's going to take us through a few topics, including key dates within our program calendar, how to avoid those data errors that can cause students to miss out on scholarships, and taking us through requirements to redeem a scholarship once you've earned them. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thanks, Jonah, for the warm introduction. So I'm going to start off just talking about our key dates for the program. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of the full year, but we're going to just jump right in here based on where we are right now in the calendar. Just a note before we start in, we are talking about awards year 2022. So we're talking about grade 12 students who are still in grade 12 right now and will be graduating between September 1st, 2021 and August 31st, 2022. So looking at November here, we can note that vouchers for the past awards year for our 2021 graduates have been mailed out. And the first thing I'd like to note for you about November is student transcript service. So it's been mentioned a couple times already, but this is a really, really important website for students to know about after graduation in the fall, pretty much right now each year. So students should be logging into the student transcript service, and after they graduate, and on that website, they can do things like order their transcripts, but they're also able to view any scholarships that they've won through the program there as well. So very handy tool for graduates. Another note about November, again, as mentioned, is that our Excellence and Pathway applications will be open shortly. We're aiming for November, recognizing that we might be a little bit past that this year, but they'll be coming up in the next few weeks here. So moving on to 2022 and taking a look at February, and this is when our Excellence and Pathway applications will be due. They're due on February 15th, and I'd like to note a change for you this year about that deadline. They'll be due this year at 2:59 p.m. So we've changed that timing from usually it's 11:59 p.m., so late at night, and we've changed it to be later on, but earlier in the afternoon. That way staff are available to assist students who are applying. Later on, like right before those applications are due, we'll be there to answer last minute questions and things like that about those applications. And The other piece that will be coming in February is our allocations will be posted on that administrator page for the district authority scholarships, so that districts and FISA know how many scholarships they have to award to their 2022 graduates. So moving into the summer, June is when conditional recipients of the Excellence and Pathway scholarships will be notified. They're notified via email, and that letter will go to both the recipient and the recipient's school. And another piece that happens in June is the deadline for districts in FISA to report their lists of conditional recipients for the district authority scholarship to the ministry. So one note about that reporting is that schools and districts are encouraged to consider having runner-ups for the district authority scholarship. That's just in case of any conditional recipients that don't meet requirements by August 31st. They don't need to be submitted at that time, but it's recommended that you have a few more names in mind ahead of that August 31st deadline. All right, so after graduation and looking at August now, August 31st is a key date for schools to have their records updated before they're sent off to the ministry. So this is to ensure all eligible students will be considered for scholarships. So remember that deadline, and I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk to you about the potential data errors that come along with it. So looking into September, this is when the ministry will be checking the eligibility requirements against that data received from schools and assigning the scholarships. And then into October, as I mentioned, we've mailed out the 2021 vouchers. And so come October next year, the 2022 Excellence and Pathway vouchers will be mailed. And all of the notices about scholarships, all 4 scholarships for 2022 grads, will be posted to STS. And that's, again, the student transcript service. And here is a little look at what students can see when they go to that scholarships page on the student transcript service. So they'll have their personal details there. It'll give them the name of any awards that they've won under the program, show them the value, and also the expiry date of that award. And I'll get into that as well. Okay, so as promised, I'd like to give you a little bit more information about data errors that can impact students. So the ministry relies on the data that's reported by schools by that August 31st date in order to check the grade and eligibility requirements for students and also to mail those vouchers to students. So any incorrect data that comes over to the ministry can cause students to be ineligible and can cause students to miss out on scholarships. So one example of that is if the Canadian citizenship or permanent residency is not reported correctly in the student information system. So it must be reported in the student information system with that C indicator, and that needs to be done for those data transfers or traxing those records over to the ministry ahead of the August 31st deadline. So students who don't have that C reported, including blank entries, will be ineligible for scholarships. So to expand a little bit on this, we can talk about the district authority scholarship process. So this year, over 5,000 students were submitted in June as conditional recipients. And in the fall, after checking eligibility, there were some students that we could not award. So at that point, investigations are required into each student, asking the question, are these data errors? Or are these students truly ineligible? Have they not met the core requirements of the scholarship? So over the past about 8 weeks now, we've been working with school districts in FISA to resolve these problems. And I know it's a super busy time of year, I'm sure for yourselves and for my team as well. but definitely one of my favorite parts of the job, being able to connect with your coordinators across the province, just like fabulous teams all across the way. And I do want to share some good news with you that this year, 23 school districts had 0 errors for those conditional recipient reports, which is 8 more than last year. And we had fewer errors overall as well. So thank you so much for your hard work this year. And just a final note about that district authority process is it does take time to work out those errors. So the students that may be found to be eligible but had an error will end up receiving their vouchers later than their peers that weren't involved in that. So moving on from district, we can talk about BC Achievement as a different example. There is only one event where recipients are determined for BC Achievement. There's no back and forth like there is with district. So what that means is if the student information system doesn't show a student as having graduated, for example, by August 31st, their grades will not be included in the determination for BC Achievement, and the student will miss out. Similarly, if the student's citizenship or permanent residency status is incorrectly or not reported in the student information system, their grades again will not be included and they will miss out on the scholarship. So these students will be determined to be ineligible and they will miss out on those opportunities. So it's very important that all the records are accurate ahead of the August 31st deadline. And just a final note on that data in the student information systems is because we do rely on mailing the vouchers to students. Please also ensure that their addresses are up to date in your systems ahead of that deadline. Okay, so moving on, let's talk a little bit about the requirements to redeem. So earlier, we talked about the core and scholarship specific requirements. Those are the requirements that need to be met in order to earn a scholarship, things like that citizenship or permanent residency, or minimum grade requirements for BC Excellence and Pathway scholarships. So there are also requirements in order to turn that scholarship voucher into a check. If those redemption requirements aren't met or haven't been met yet, students can't use their scholarship. So the first piece is that the post-secondary institution the student is attending must be designated. If it's not designated, the student can't redeem the scholarship. So on the slide here, we have a few links here. So students can check those links and see if their school is listed there. And if it's not, they may consider requesting their school seek designation. And then a note about the Pathway scholarship. Students may only redeem that scholarship if they're attending an approved K-12 teaching program, and no exceptions can be made for that requirement. It's another reason why they have 7 years rather than 5 to redeem that scholarship. Some of those programs start a little bit later. So this is something to keep in mind when selecting your district authority conditional recipients or BC Excellence nominees. Is just to make sure your chosen students understand these requirements. So once they find out about the school they're attending, we have a few more requirements before they can redeem. So as Rob mentioned earlier, the scholarships program functions like a reimbursement. So these aren't cash awards for students. So students must wait until their program has started and their tuition has been paid before redeeming. So one thing to note here is that some students learn about their selection earlier than others, such as those district authority conditional recipient and award ceremonies during graduation. So it's most important that those students understand that there is that time between learning about their selection and turning that voucher into a check that they must be attending and have their tuition be paid by then. So once that happens, students must provide proof of their enrollment and their tuition paid to the ministry. The easiest way to do that is have their voucher that they've received now in the mail, signed and stamped by their post-secondary. But no worries if they can't do that, if they're attending remote classes or anything like that, they can collect alternative documents. These are things like statements of account, confirmation of enrollment letters, and so on. And they are usually available on the post-secondary student services page just for download for those students. Last fall, we had a very high volume of students asking that exact question. How do I redeem my scholarship if I'm not attending my school, or perhaps I'm not even in the city that my school is located in? This is, due to not having classes on campus and navigating the pandemic. It's possible that this will continue impacting students this year, so we want to make them aware of this option of gathering those other documents as well. And the final note about scholarship redemptions is that they do expire. As we mentioned, most of our scholarships are valid for 5 years, and the Pathway Scholarship has an additional 2 years, is valid for 7. And those expiry dates are printed right on the voucher that students receive in the mail. And they're also available, like we showed in the screen there, on the student transcript service. The expiry date is printed right on there as well. So one thing we'd like you to do is encourage your students to redeem their scholarships right away. As soon as they meet those redemption requirements, the attending school and having their tuition been paid, to redeem the scholarship and benefit right away from that. One of the reasons we would like to put some stress on that is we have had students in the past come forward with expired scholarships that they had saved as a budgeting technique, but then unfortunately forgot about them. So we want to make sure all of those students get benefit from the scholarships and redeem them right away. So talking about redemptions makes us ask the question, what happens next? Are students using these awards? So here, this graph says, yes, they are. Going to walk you through this a little bit here, but what this shows is the percentage of students who have redeemed their scholarship over the past few years and up to this year. So on the left here, that highlighted section, this is a set of scholarships that is now expired, again, aside from Pathway, who has 2 more years there. And you can see 100% of the students who received the BC Excellence Scholarship in that year have now redeemed. And then again, you can see a little bit fewer for District Authority and Achievement, which is similar to other expired years. Second from the right, these are students who have now had a full year to redeem their scholarship. And we see over 50% have now redeemed, which is also typical of the first year redemptions of past years. And then on the far right there, those small little bars, that is the students who just recently graduated. They've just received their vouchers in the mail. And so the numbers are small as expected, but they're climbing daily. And just to note that this is our super busy time of year for students redeeming. We're receiving hundreds of redemptions each day. Now, another interesting note here, looking at the pie chart, this shows 25% of students who have a valid voucher and are or have been in the past enrolled in a BC post-secondary institution, but they have not redeemed. So just an interesting piece to note here, and we again want to encourage all students who've received a scholarship voucher to redeem that voucher and redeem it as soon as they've met those redemption requirements. So I'm going to now pass back to Shona, and she's going to take us through some recent improvements and also take a look at some upcoming work.
Thank you very much, Lesia. Okay, we wanted to tell you a few things that we've been up to, just in terms of what we hope and believe are improving services to students. So one example is we are moments away from launching a new online web form that students use to redeem their scholarships. So they already redeem online, but we've received lots of feedback from students and parents that it's been tough to navigate. And so we've spent a lot of time going over that, and we think we have a much better form online. So it's going to mean a lot more clear instructions and a lot less back and forth between the team and students, particularly around documents that they need to provide and so on, and essentially faster payments to them. So that should be a good thing. Another new improvement that we have is we're about to launch a new web form where students can write to the team to ask for a status update on their scholarship. So let's say that someone over 8 weeks ago now submitted a BC Achievement Scholarship, and that 8 weeks time frame, which we let them know they should anticipate between redeeming a scholarship, submitting all the required information, and then receiving their check in the mail. So that time frame has passed. They're wondering what's up. So they can now use, or about to be, it's not quite live yet, this secure web form to ask us questions. And that's instead of email, it's going to be more secure for their information. And we believe it's going to be a lot less back and forth again between the team and students. It's going to get them the information they're looking for faster, and it's going to get checks in hands to the students faster. What's next, or what's about to be happening, or what is already underway for our team? A few examples are, always want to continue hearing from districts on ways to support full use of those district authority scholarships. Is it different kinds of information, these kinds of webinars, what have you. Every year, about 2% of those district authority scholarships are not awarded, and just really want to encourage those to be 100% when at all possible. We also, as I mentioned, really want to encourage all schools, all high schools, to have that nomination process in place for selecting and nominating a candidate for the BC Excellence Scholarship. And of course, we want to see those redemption rates reach 100% and make sure that every student who receives a scholarship through our program is using them within the 5 or 7 years for pathway, a time frame that they have to use them and make to support them in their transition into post-secondary study. We're just about to hear from you now and take your questions. Before we do, though, I want to just share with you some of the ways that we think we can all continue to work to support students through scholarships, whether it's making sure having those scholarship conversations are early and in the fall, and even with grade 10 and 11 students as they're preparing ahead of time for graduation. Considering the variety of district authority awards and awarding across the 7 areas, and of course making sure those data is submitted correctly and on time to the ministry. And last but not least is we definitely want to hear from you, your thoughts on policy, on how the program works, on whether this webinar was helpful to you. So consider those questions as we get into the question time and later on as well. All right, Kevin, could you let us know how much time we have for some Q&A?
I have a number of questions, and thank you very much, Shona. So the first question, do students have to attend post-secondary school in BC to redeem their scholarship? Can they be going to post-secondary outside of the province?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are lots of international schools which are on that list of designated schools through Student Aid BC.
Okay, thank
So
you.
not restricted to BC schools. Love our students to stay and learn and start their careers here,
Of course.
but not restricted to BC.
Next question, which of these 4 scholarships are open to students on an adult dogwood and or non-school age students, so in adult ed?
Thank you. So the District Authority Scholarship is the one scholarship in the program that's open to students on the adult dogwood. There's no age restriction to my knowledge. It's just if you're on the adult dogwood, you are, and you fulfill the requirements of it, you are eligible for the District Authority Scholarship.
Okay. Can you, if a student misses out on a BC Achievement Award due to data error, is the district made aware of that to avoid future errors?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's possible that a student could, after the determination, after the fall, where they were hoping for an achievement scholarship, and they might ask the ministry about it, and we let them know, you know, I'm sorry, you were reported as a non-citizen, for example, that rendered you ineligible. If that was indeed incorrect, that student might come to the school, or they might ask the ministry to connect with their school, but there's no review that happens proactively.
Okay. The questions are all over the map, so thank you for this. Just wondering if there's been a conversation inside the ministry about acknowledging students on an evergreen program and how the ministry may approach that.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I would say we certainly welcome feedback around that. At this time, you know, the eligibility requirement is that a student must have graduated, and that is, you know, graduated with a dogwood for excellence, for achievement, and for the district authority and pathway, and the district authority graduated with the dogwood or the adult dogwood. So at this time, the evergreen does not meet the graduation requirement, and so not eligible for the scholarships within our program.
Okay. Just a wonder from one of our participants if you could speak a little bit more about the August 31st reporting needs in order to avoid data errors. Is that for students who have graduated looking back at the past year, or for new grade 12 students heading into their final year?
I want to make sure I understand the question. So I'm going to give you an example and let me know if I've answered it. So here we are in, I know the program calendar is a bit different than, you know, the legal school year, for example, but for our requirements this year, we're looking at students who graduate between September 1st, 2021, and they have until August 31st, or the grades and all reporting must be into the ministry by August 31st, 2022. So we're looking at students who are within that, the 2021 graduation year, kind of, but if they graduate over the summer, they're going to be considered along with a student who would have graduated in June 2022. If they graduate over July 2022 or August 2022, they're part of that previous cohort, and that August 31st deadline is previous years. Does that answer your question? The question, Kevin?
I hope it does. I hope the person who asked those questions respond as to whether that answered the question or not.
We can definitely provide kind of a detailed breakdown of what that looks like in some of the material that we send out. I know it can be a bit confusing.
Okay. I wonder about adult grads and the inability to receive a Pathway to Teaching award.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I could answer it right off the bat in terms of why that those requirements were made for just the students on the dogwood. All awards but the district are open just to students on the dogwood. It's something that I'd need to take away.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I'm just looking to see if we have any more questions to our participants, just type them in the chat box or into the Q&A box. I think there was, sorry, I'm just scrolling up. Thank you for your patience. So the question is, I'm curious, when a student graduates on paper in January, semester school took English and CLC first semester, for instance, but continues to attend until June, they're not considered eligible. I think it's more of a statement than a question, but your response.
No, it's okay. So let's say we're here in November, and you've got a grade 12 student. Hopefully I'm answering the question. Let's say they meet requirements now, but they're not done. They're going to carry on and walk across the aisle, so to speak, in June. Yes, they are eligible for the 2022 award season, which we're in right now. Okay. Did that help? Or they graduate in January, that's okay too.
Yeah, it feels to me like it did. I will continue to say, I may have missed a couple of questions here as I scroll up through the chat box, but as I mentioned, certainly I will take any questions that were not answered and pass them on to our presenters today, and we will get the answers back out to you. And so, Shona, I think we've answered the majority of the questions. I'm just curious if you have any closing comments before we wrap up.
Just really appreciate everyone's interest, and kudos to this incredible team. We're small and mighty, and just have this incredibly hardworking and passionate and compassionate team here working for your students on this side. So please know that. Really welcome your feedback. Please consider some of those calls to action, and get in touch with us for any of your questions or feedback on program policy, or just nuts and bolts administration and delivery. Thank you again. Want to repeat some of the well wishes to everyone in the province, especially those who have been so terribly affected by the weather. And yeah, we think of you. We appreciate your work you do every day for your students, and we just value you and respect your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So the chat box is filling up with thank yous for your time and for this very informative webinar. As always, we welcome the opportunity to connect ministry personnel with our members and others through this format. So an open invitation to you and your colleague, Shona. And thank you very much to Rob and Alessia for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to bring our time together to a close. Thank you very much. Everyone stay safe and dry, and thank you for being a part of this today. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kevin, and everyone else. Thank you.